I call it, and it's called, I'm not the first one to call it, thought forms. Even when there's nothing there, we can create entities out of spiritual energy. That doesn't mean they can't do us harm, and they can't drain us, and they can't carry on with its own certain particular life of existence. These pose a danger. They're very real. You know, what's a thought form? Are we God's thought form, so to speak, creation's thought forms? But the point is, hysteria can make something happen. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. We're creating things that we don't know what to do with, that have no purpose, that can only hurt us. And it's absolutely, it's crazy. It's kind of like mob hysteria.
Exactly.
Run amok, becoming something manifesting.
Exactly, and I think that the way that these people are doing these so-called investigation, when the general public sees them, you know, that's why they're not taken seriously. And this also puts in the same category as these woo-woo investigators, the credible investigators.
Yeah, I have absolutely my own little purpose, which is to begin to get together to do hopefully a documentary about legitimate stuff from people from various points of view, so people do not think these shows I'm seeing of the paranormal, I don't know what they're saying and why they're filming it, and I don't know who's watching it and why, but it's atrocious. It's terrible.
Richard, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. Don't go away, Richard, but Robert, I will be calling you. I'd like to have you on for a full hour to talk magic with us.
Sure, that'd be great.
All right, I'll be contacting you either later on tonight or tomorrow morning, and I would love to get you on the show so we can have an hour talking about your experiences as a professional magician.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Robert, thanks very much for joining us and for listening to AM 920 CJCH.
Yeah, thanks for the time.
My pleasure, sir. Richard, my good friend, always great talking to you. I've sent you an email. Read it over. Send it back to me. I'd be interested in hearing your comments.
I would love to, and please keep in mind the idea of talking about the significance of prayer.
Why don't we do that next week?
Sounds good.
Richard P. Jackson, www.richardpjackson.com. Take care, my friend. Be safe.
You too, Rod. Be safe yourself. Goodbye, Exo Nation.
Good night, Richard. On tonight's show, we have Richard Jackson. He's going to be talking about the world of the paranormal and how to properly investigate a paranormal occurrence.
Ivan was an old bear tracker. Tom was a man with dreams. And Ernie came along and I wrote the songs about a creature that few's ever seen. Monsters, myths, and mysteries, legend, tales, and facts. It brought us all together, and it's a reason for the fact. Up in North California, where the redwoods reach the skies.
For 20 years, Richard P. Jackson has been involved in some of the most noted psychic, supernatural events of our time. As a multi-gifted medium and psychic, few have had the hands-on credentials and accolades in such a wide variety of situations and perspectives as Richard has. Theologians, medical, historical, and researchers have witnessed his skill at maneuvering spiritual on the gifts to have a vast array of witnessed accounts of altering and making better the condition of our spirit realm. And joining us now is Richard P. Jackson. His website, www.richardpjackson.com. Richard, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, Rob. Good evening, Exo Nation.
You know what, Richard, before, as we were coming into the show, I was listening to the news, and you've got this astronaut who's gone a little loco. Today, NASA says, well, you know what, we've got to revamp our psychological profiling. I said this last night, and people laughed at me. Well, it only made sense. Then we've got the soldiers who stole $3.5 million, and the authorities are very happy. They've already recovered $2 million. Let me see. We've got global warming. We've got more endangered species being added to the list. We have theological wars that are just simmering, waiting for that, that spark to hit the flames. And in general, people are grumpy. Mm-hmm. What is going on, my friend?
Well, the biggest case that we have to investigate on this planet is the state of the planet. And a lot of what is happening is absolutely connected to spiritual law and spiritual happenings. The old law, What goes around comes around. Call it vibration, the collective mind. You have an area when bloodshed and hatred continues for so long. Does it affect people as they come onto the scene? You bet it does. Just like it would in a haunting. Things that we hopefully will cover tonight and ongoing about things to be careful of. It's happening in our world. It's absolutely going to a different vibration, and it's going to be affected by spiritual things, by the collective mind, whether we believe in it or not. That's what's happening. The Mideast is a very haunted area.
It's also a very volatile area right now, and things are going to happen that have been predicted hundreds of years ago. Now, I'm not one that has always believed in the predictions of Nostradamus and other people like Edgar Cayce. However, when they have had the ability to predict years now, not in the case of Edgar Cayce, but in Nostradamus hundreds of years ago, and when you hear the Quatrains as portrayed by John Hogue, it doesn't take a scholar to add 1 and 1 to get 2.
Not at all. He was tapping into, as somebody with exceedingly prophetic gifts, he was tapping into what that universal mind was saying, this is likely to happen, but it wouldn't have been given it to him without the ability to somehow alter it by telling people we can alter our future. We're not sitting ducks.
Is this the ever never-ending struggle between good and evil, positive and negative, that we're seeing happen here?
The answer is yes, but I have to qualify it by saying, in this corner of the universe, it's a big place. Where we are now, where humanity is, that's our game right now. It's not always going to be our game. It's not our game where we go into spirit. But right here, it is. It's a battle.
I received a telephone call this afternoon from one of our listeners, and we had a good talk, and he says, Rob, just imagine if what you and I are experiencing right now in our lifetimes is what life is all about, a glimpse that we're programmed by some species, or we're here for some entertainment of some unseen force. What happens if life is just what we see it? And I talked to him for about an hour and a half, and I just have to say at the end, wow, I never thought of it that way.
That would frighten me had I not had both the blessing, and sometimes I think it's a little bit of a curse, to literally have a foot on the other side. To know that there is a whole lot more, and a lot of it is bright and beautiful. And that's with something that I'm experiencing from time to time, that I'm not saying it out of blind faith. That I can assure you that there's a whole lot more, and whether other species are involved or not, in a sense, is almost irrelevant. What we go through in our growth, because whether it's a species taking care of us, and that's our God, or our sub-God under God, in a sense is very important, but maybe it doesn't matter either. We're here to exercise our free will and have an opportunity to make things better, and to grow, and to help others, and to get the number one spiritual law, which is the fact that we all matter to each other, and we better get it straight.
Love one another.
Yeah. We're in trouble if we don't, and what will happen is ultimately we will get to a point of no return by not listening, and it won't be the end of the show, but we will miss this wonderful physical experiment on this planet for the time being. We will go on and exist, but we'll miss a wonderful opportunity because it's a nice planet from up above, and from what I'm told, this beautiful blue marble doesn't show hatred from above. It doesn't show boundaries. It doesn't show spilt blood. It's very pretty, and I think it can be very pretty for everyone. We're going through our learning, and we're not doing it very easily, are we?
No, we're not. Why did you call it an experiment?
I think that we're not stagnant beings, and I think at this point in our being, meaning the soul, so to speak, of humanity, which means humanity as well as each of us. There's more. We come from another place and we go on. That's the precept of all major religions. And whether we look at a religious point of view or spiritual, that is the truth. So what we're doing now, we have some say in the matter. And whatever happens, we will continue and exist. And whether we like it or not, we're part of our own experiment.
our own experiment.
Sure. What we do and its effect on people around us, on our nation, on our community, on our species, all matters to each other. You know, there's things, they say that somebody throwing a stone in the water in Madagascar affects everyone's life.
The ripple
most
effect.
things are kind of trade-offs, but everybody matters or they wouldn't be here.
1-877-528-8255 is toll-free. Richard P. Jackson's our guest, and his website is www.richardpjackson.com. What is new with you in the world of the paranormal, my friend?
I am hearing such stress from people in general that I was kind of grinning, because I've never gotten so many calls about people simply feeling that they don't really believe in anything anymore. They're just worried. Mm-hmm. They're seeing people very frightened, and people in general running amok. Now, I may not be a true slice of what's going on, but usually I'll get anywhere from 10 to 40 or 50 calls in a week. And it seems that people seem to feel that they're in trouble. More people are coming to me to just be soothed for their spirit than they are for problems. They're feeling that there's death around them. I don't know why they feel there's more death. I think that people are starting to deal with the idea of mortality. This whole idea of global warming, this whole idea of more wars, of possible wars occurring and breaking out right next to the one we already have. Mm-hmm. People are starting to understand that it's not just something on the other side of the world. Their whole lives and being in families are going to have to reap some of the aftermath of what's going on right now. People are frightened, and when people are frightened, they look for answers, but they also get angry.
All right, I'd just like to remind everyone that the X-Zone is being brought to you by the good people at Just Like Sugar. For those times in life when life just isn't sweet enough, there's always Just Like Sugar, the all-natural, zero-sweetener, calorie sweetener. And if you'd like a free sample of Just Like Sugar, visit our websites at www.xzoneradio.com or xzonetv.com. Or if you see the X-Zone Radio TV show Cruiser in your neighborhood, we always carry Just Like Sugar on board. Just stop us and we'll be glad to give you a sample. Let's go to our phones, Richard. We have Rob in Scarborough joining us now. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Good, my friend. Good, and you?
Not bad. It's nice and warm in the apartment for a change.
There you go. Rob, Richard's with us. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I got a question. If one wants to become a paranormal investigator, what is the education that you need to become one?
Great question, and the answer to that would fill a book, but I'm going to give you a couple preliminaries best I can. First of all, there is no basic, you have to do this. If you decide you want to investigate, then you're an investigator. There's no real criteria. The idea, and it was what I expected to say, so I'm going to use it with your question. First of all, it's the five W's. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Where are you doing it? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? The whole idea is, what's paranormal? Is it the idea that when you meditate, we may get information or help our psychic ability or our psychic vision? Is it to run to see if, in fact, some of these lakes and places of legend hold some credence to it? Mm-hmm. Do we want to go to a haunting to find out why things move or what's reported? It's not that there's one area. And then it's a matter of, do we want to investigate it because we want to, for some religious criteria, make a change? Do we want to do it so that our belief is real? Do we want to just have fun because this is really the very nut and bolt of our existence? It's kind of exhilarating, and everybody is frightened at the idea who's never seen a being on the other side, but everybody wants to experience it. Everybody wants to know. So a lot of it really has to do with, well, what is it that, for example, if you want to, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to make it better? Is there something you went through as a kid? Is it a neighbor? Is it something specifically you're interested in? And before, I could, and anybody could really answer how to go about it, it's really a matter of, well, what is it that you see that you want to do? And anything you say is legitimate, but that would be the criteria of, okay, here's how to proceed from there.
Because I figured you'd have to take, like, physics or...
Richard P. Jackson's our special guest, and Rob had just asked Richard what it takes to be a paranormal researcher before we went to break. And gentlemen, welcome back.
Thank you.
Hi, Rob. Yeah, in a nutshell, okay, you're a psychic investigator or a paranormal investigator. Now you have to say to yourself, what is it that I wish to do? Knowing that all the tools, whether they be science, whether they be religion, whether they be history, folklore, whether they be electronics, they're all part of tools we can use to study the paranormal, which really, let's start using the term the spirit world, because that's really what it is, and its effect on us on other things, that those things are tools, but they can't be answered in and of themselves. I have many conversations with people who call themselves Christian paranormal investigators, in which I said, I think it's great you're an investigator, I think it's great that you're a Christian, but aren't you coming in with a little bit of a bias? And, okay, but as long as they know they're walking in with a bias. The same thing with science. If somebody was to be a parapsychologist, you do indeed need to go to school. You're going to be getting courses on all the fringe areas of science and psychology to try to find out what is going on when something happens, so you have the knowledge to measure, well, gee, is this anomaly happened because there's something geological happening under the house, or because of the power lines nearby, or because, in fact, there's an entity in the house? My contention with that is that, in fact, there may be an effect from the power lines which may have drawn the entities. So it's one of those things where you really need to have patience and take a long time to really look around. There's no one book to read. There's probably about 500 books to look through so that you could begin to get little bits of information where you need it, so you can know what you think your journey needs to be. Because no one person sees the things the same. Not everybody, no matter how much they study, are going to be gifted. And the main thing that I'd want to point out is to be very, very careful when you are really dealing with energies other than what you're used to. It is a draw on health, and I mean mental, I mean physical, and it doesn't always happen instantly.
Now,
I'm sick half the time because of my work for 20 years. It's the price I paid.
Now, what I would like to add is that in order to be any kind of investigator, whether it's investigating the paranormal or whether it's investigating a civil case or a criminal case, you do have to understand what it takes to gather evidence, what is evidence, how to gather evidence, how to take proper photographs, what to look for, what not to look for, and how to go into an investigation without a bias. This is one of the big problems I see today, is that we have a lot of enthusiasm being brought into any research investigation that is done in the world of the paranormal, or when it comes to ufology. People, for some reason, like to put that handle investigator or researcher on themselves when they really have no idea what they're doing. In fact, the law enforcement agencies are getting so tired of ghost investigators and paranormal investigators trespassing that now, instead of just giving them warnings, they're actually being charged with trespass. There's a lot that has to be taken into consideration, and I, Richard, do not believe that people who have no experience whatsoever, who have not taken basic courses, should call themselves an investigator or researcher.
I actually get very upset with people who do.
So do I.
I don't believe people should go to... I've talked to people, and I've been invited, and I learned my lesson, this is a while back, where people were calling themselves spiritual doctors.
Oh, my
and
gosh.
upon meeting them, they went to a seminar 2 weekends in a row. That's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. I absolutely agree 100%, Rob.
Or how about the people who now go on the internet, pay $500 and get themselves a doctorate degree from one of these online churches?
Somebody's making money.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, but, you know, if you want to become a doctor, go to school. If you want to become, whatever the case is that you want to become, go to school. Pay your dues. Take the necessary courses. Don't think by taking an internet course or a correspondence course or reading a couple of books. It gives you the experience or the knowledge to actually know what you're doing. When a police officer comes out of the academy, they don't put him in a lone patrol car. He's got to stay with someone who can guide him with the experience. And that's a perfect example. You just don't take someone off the street, give them a gun and badge, and put them in a police car. They have to take the academy courses. Now you have to take college courses before you're even considered for the academy.
And you know, you're bringing not only an important point, but an absolutely direly important point, is that things are going to be touched upon without some degree of background from somewhere. And I can't begin to tell people enough. People who don't think they're going to get hurt, who will laugh this off, who are running around taking pictures and, you know, going into the old broken-down prisons that are abandoned and getting a thrill, they may, and I don't wish this upon them, many of them are going to pay a price, just like the guy who said, you know, I worked with asbestos without a mask for 10 years and I'm fine.
Exactly.
Well, ask him in 20 years if he's fine.
You know, Batman at Master Control brought up a perfect example. A lawyer just doesn't go out practicing. He has to go to law school. He has to pass the bar exams. You know, and then he's not a, you know, he doesn't go out on his own. He usually works as with a big firm, learning the ropes. You know, it's not a matter of just saying, all right, I'm going to become a Ghostbuster, I'm going to become a UFO investigator. And that ticks me off because you've got people out there who are running around who have no idea what they're doing. It's like the old CB clubs of the late 60s. Everybody had a CB in their car. They didn't know what the heck they were doing, but it was a good reason to socialize. And I think this is what the paranormal is being used today for, is a socialization tool.
It's socialization, and it's also a way for people, and you hit it on the head, Rob, it's for people to be somebody without necessarily going through what people have to go through to say, I've earned a degree, I've earned a right to say this. And they're, you know, they're, even with the best of intent, they're putting themselves and other people in real danger. I don't think I could say this without it being an absolute fact. I think more than half of the times that I am called to help people, and always have been, it is because of people investigating or going into things they knew nothing about and getting into serious trouble. I would say that's much more than half of my investigations, and also the work that I have to do to help those people. And not everybody, you know, it's one of those things, not everybody gets well when you're sick. Not everybody, when you have an encounter with the paranormal, there aren't that many experts, even those who are experts, that knows exactly what to do. We're dealing with forces that are, you know, they're second to God, so to speak. They're part of creation. They're things we know fringes of, and it's not something you can always take 2 aspirin for and it goes away. For example, just the word haunted. And, you know, we got many, many sessions, by the way, and cover a lot of ground. We can only do so much in a little bit of time. But just to throw something out, you're dealing with a haunting. Okay, just leaving what we're talking about, just a haunting. Are you talking about a haunted place? Are you talking about a haunted person? Are you talking about a curse? Are you talking about a self-fulfilling prophecy that is really psychological in nature? You know, just the idea that something moves or there's a legitimate bang in the house. Is it because of something from the flea market? Is it because of people who practiced magic in there 4 years ago and called something in? Is it because, you know, grandma doesn't know she's dead yet? Or is it because somebody was playing with magic and called in a very dark form? You know, there's so much to it, and people need to be very careful about mimicking what they're seeing on these atrocious shows on TV.
You know,
I am very opinionated about that. I hope you don't mind. I think Rob's kind of in my corner there.
Yes, definitely. I'm 150%. Thanks very much for giving us a call, Rob. Let's go now to Nova Scotia. We have Robert on the line with us, who listens to us on AM 920 CJCH. Hi, Robert.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, not too bad. Yourself?
Very good.
Good hearing from you, and thank you for your email.
Oh, no, you're welcome.
Robert, what would you like to add?
Well, I'm just curious. I'd like to ask your guest how much of what researchers and I guess people that call researchers come in and investigate, how much of what is experienced is actually based on either bias, suggestibility, or expectation, or perhaps a combination of 2 or all 3?
I'd say probably the slight majority. I'd say probably more than half. And the one of the things is that we all act on subliminal messages. Lots of times people get very interested in investigating the paranormal because for some reason, whether they've experienced it as a kid, whether they know it or not, or whether they're likely to be haunted people, or just the fact that they can't get enough of it and they're wide open, their suggestibility might add something to a place that may or may not really be haunted, but by them going there, they just haunted it and themselves.
Right.
Because what you ask for is often what you get. And when people keep wanting to experience or see something, sometimes they see it and it's really valid, but they brought it on themselves. It wasn't even there before. But there are spirits waiting for people to say, I want to see something. I want to experience something.
Let me ask Robert a question. Robert, you're a professional magician. How much of a magician's trick is the expectation from the crowd?
Well, a lot of magic is based on it. I mean, good performance magic is based on leading a person's mind down a logical path of thinking to an illogical conclusion. So in other words, 1 + 1 + 1 = 4.
Right.
If a person goes back to think about what they saw and what took place, the 1 + 1 + 1 makes sense, but the conclusion doesn't. However, they can rationalize in their mind afterwards and realize that, okay, it was just a trick.
I can give you a perfect example of this. My dad did this to me when I was a young boy. He said, all right, you see my 10 fingers? Take the little finger on your left hand, count backwards towards your thumb.
Yes.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6. 6 and 5 is 11.
Right, yeah.
Or what I did one day in Toronto. I was at the corner of Bay and Yonge. A friend of mine, Andrew Crystal, had his show, and I used to be a regular on his show. And I stood on the corner looking up at one of the busiest corners in Toronto.
Yes.
Within minutes, I had a crowd looking up in the sky, and people were saying, there it is, I see it. And I was looking at nothing.
I actually did a similar type of experiment back when I was in university. And myself and a friend, we were outside doing the same type of thing, just staring up at the sky.
Yeah.
What type of crowd that you would draw, because just the suggestion of looking up itself will cause, not everyone, but a good chunk of people to actually stop and take a look themselves. And then out of that group, there will be a smaller percentage that will actually claim to see something.
I think that it's the desire of the person who goes on a ghost walk or goes into a so-called haunted house that, number one, could either be the anticipation or what they're hearing or what they are seeing, science is now saying, could be projected from people within that group.
Right.
Like audible or visual ESP.
Yes. So I think the one thing that bothers me, and that was kind of the crux of my call, is I know that the paranormal is not what we would call necessarily pure science or the science we understand today. However, what I get bothered by is when a researcher is questioned further to phenomenon that apparently they claim to have experienced or have information on, and it gets to the point that they really can't back up or provide necessary information to prove their claim. Then they toss it back to the person who's asking the questions by saying that, well, you can't prove that it didn't happen.
Richard P. Jackson is our guest of this hour, www.richardpjackson.com. And we have Robert on the phone with us from Nova Scotia. Robert listens to us on AM 920 CJCH, and Robert is a professional magician. So, Robert, thanks very much for giving us a call.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
We were talking about the investigation of the paranormal, and I've been on some of these so-called investigations, and what they turned out to be are giggling contests. You know, they nobody takes them really serious. It's not done with any authority. It's done by people. Now, I'm not saying that all of the cases are like this, but the cases that I've been on, you know, it's more of a night out.
And people don't understand that sometimes when they are encountering energies, no one may not be getting a photograph, but just their intent of opening themselves up, there may be one or two among that crowd that's very vulnerable. Might be the spirit of somebody who's an addict, and they're not on the other side, and they still want to carry on their addiction. And I've had some great luck with people who are addicted and haunted. And you're right, most of the time it just becomes, it's silly. That doesn't mean there's still not danger. In fact, there's a phenomenon, I call it, and it's called, I'm not the first one to call it, thought forms. Even when there's nothing there, we can create entities out of spiritual energy. That doesn't mean they can't do us harm, and they can't drain us, and they can't carry on with its own certain particular life of existence. These pose a danger. They're very real. You know, what's a thought form? Are we God's thought form, so to speak, creation's thought forms? But the point is, hysteria can make something happen. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. We're creating things that we don't know what to do with, that have no purpose, that can only hurt us. And it's absolutely, it's crazy. It's kind of like mob hysteria.
Exactly.
Run amok, becoming something manifesting.
Exactly, and I think that the way that these people are doing these so-called investigation, when the general public sees them, you know, that's why they're not taken seriously. And this also puts in the same category as these woo-woo investigators, the credible investigators.
Yeah, I have absolutely my own little purpose, which is to begin to get together to do hopefully a documentary about legitimate stuff from people from various points of view, so people do not think these shows I'm seeing of the paranormal, I don't know what they're saying and why they're filming it, and I don't know who's watching it and why, but it's atrocious.
Richard,
it's terrible.
Richard, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. Don't go away, Richard, but Robert, I will be calling you. I'd like to have you on for a full hour to talk magic with us.
Sure, that'd be great.
All right, I'll be contacting you either later on tonight or tomorrow morning, and I would love to get you on the show so we can have an hour talking about your experiences as a professional magician.
Sounds good.
All right, Robert, thanks very much for joining us and for listening to AM 920 CJCH.
Yeah, thanks for the time.
My pleasure, sir. Richard, my good friend, always great talking to you. I've sent you an email. Read it over. Send it back to me. I'd be interested in hearing your comments.
I would love to, and please keep in mind the idea of talking about the significance of prayer.
Why don't we do that next week?
Sounds good.
Richard P. Jackson, www.richardpjackson.com. Take care, my friend. Be safe.
You too, Rod. Be safe yourself. Goodbye, X-Zone Nation.
Good night, Richard.